10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 117. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 117 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Hope you are all having a great week, and thank you so much for tuning in as you do every week. If you're brand new to the show, my name is Nick Manella, and I am guiding you through a weekly short jazz lesson that's going to improve your playing, complete with PDFs and now play-alongs for most episodes, as is with this one. So if you want to get your hands on those PDFs and also the play-alongs, make sure you head over to our Patreon site, and you can find that by visiting our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. There you can find all of our back episodes, a bunch of really cool stuff that we've done, and you can go over to Patreon, follow one of the links, sign up to be a contributing member, only $3 a month to get your hands on everything that we've ever done. And one thing that we're trying to do is always make that subscription better every single week. So now we're introducing these play-alongs. You're going to hear a lot of play-alongs on the show, and you're going to actually get an MP3 copy of those play-alongs with your PDFs for the week. So it just keeps getting better. The price stays the same. This is a listener-supported show, so make sure you go over and sign up to support us. Let me give a big shout-out to everybody that has recently signed up to be a patron. Thank you to Kathleen, Mike C., Bo Wong, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I'm sorry if I messed it up. Eric, Jean, Kerry, Jonathan, John, Wyatt, Lee, Zoe, Thomas, Anthony, Jason, Mark, and Al. Thank you all so much for signing up to support the show, and we hope you're really enjoying all of those materials that you get. All right, let's jump into today's show. So today is all about playing a blues melody in 4 different keys. We always talk about developing flexibility on this show, and this is really what I think of as like the ultimate exercise for flexibility. Now, this is a little bit more advanced, so if you can't quite do this yet, don't worry about it. And next week in part 2 is actually going to be the most advanced thing that we're talking about. So if you're not quite ready for these episodes yet, just come back to them at a later date when you do feel ready. So what I've done this week is I've written a blues melody that I actually kind of like, and I think I'm going to actually make it a part of my book on gigs now, but wrote a blues melody specifically for you guys. And your challenge is going to be to put this melody into 4 different keys without stopping in between and thinking about it. And that's going to be the real challenge, is that you're going to have to practice this enough that you can put it into those 4 keys without really having to take some time and think about it in between, which I think is one of the hardest parts about being a jazz musician, is that we get all these different keys flying at us at all times. And especially like if the tempo is fast or they're really unfamiliar keys, it can be a really tough thing to overcome. But that's all part of being a complete musician, as we know, as I've mentioned a lot on this podcast. So what 4 keys are we going to do this in? Well, I wanted to think about a way to present this to you guys where the 4 keys would seamlessly flow into each other, and we could play the 4 keys that we're choosing without having to stop in between. Right? So we can't do it chromatically because that would involve actually playing it through all 12 keys, right? If we did it in, let's say, whole steps, that would take us through 6 keys, which would be too many for our purposes right now. If we decided to do it in major thirds, that would only take us through 3 keys, which would be too little that I want to present to you right now. So the thing that we're settling on is we're actually going to do these a minor third apart from each other. Because if you think about minor thirds, we go through 4 different keys, and then we get actually back to the key that we started in. So this is a great way to work on playing in different keys, but not going through all 12 because that might be, too tall of an order for some of you. Start small. And then eventually you can work your way up to doing an exercise like this, but doing it through all 12 keys, which is really, really difficult. Now, when I was back in graduate school, I used to play with this quartet. And we used to do stuff like this all the time, actually on gigs, just to like really challenge ourselves, and made it kind of like a little game between us. Like, okay, who can sound best when we're doing this really difficult thing where we're changing the key that we're playing in, every chorus or every couple of choruses. And it was a really great way to kind of put yourself out there and be really exposed, especially if you're doing it on a gig in front of an audience. And maybe it wasn't always the best decision, but we had fun with it. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this blues melody that I've written. Okay. Now let me play the blues melody for you in the original key, and that will give you an idea of what it sounds like. And then I'm going to show you what it sounds like after you go through all 4 keys and give you a few tips on how to actually handle this. So this is the melody that you're going to be using for this week. So what I tried to present to you is a pretty simple melody, and I'm really sorry for how out of tune everything is this week. It's so unbelievably hot in my studio that I just can't pull my mouthpiece out far enough to get my horn in tune. So I do apologize for that. But anyways, back to the melody. It's pretty simple, right? I tried to make something that was not going to be, a bunch of crazy 8th note lines with a lot of rhythmic stuff. It's just meant to be something that's kind of catchy and is not going to be that difficult for you to eventually bring around to the different keys. Right? So there it is in the first key. And you'll notice that the play along at the very, very end when it was fading out started to go into a different key. And that is going to be the real challenge of this episode, is starting to play in those other keys. So what you're going to do is, and here's another caveat, instead of writing this blues in a key that is like very common. So instead of writing it in concert B flat or concert F, I actually wrote it in concert C, because why not, in the spirit of this exercise, start playing it in a little bit less of a common key than we normally play the blues in, right? So it's concert C. Now what you're going to do is you're going to figure out how to play this melody in concert E flat, a minor third up. Then after that, you're going to figure out how to play this melody in concert F sharp or G flat. So that's a minor third up from E flat. And then finally, the 4th key that you're going to learn it in is concert A, right? Up a minor third from concert G flat. And then you're actually back at concert C. So after you get through the 4 keys, you're back where you started. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about these minor thirds. So you could do this around 3 different cycles, and you would actually be putting this through all 12 keys. But for now, I just want you to concentrate on the cycle that I'm presenting for you today. Now, the play along that I've made does that. Every chorus, it goes up a minor third until you get all the way back to concert C. So the play along is going to be great for you, because after you have it figured out, you've done all the legwork, you've figured this out with a slow process on your own. Now you're going to try to put it into action and play it in 4 keys without stopping. So what do you do? Well, what I do is I try to think about how the melody relates to the chords, right? And then I simply take that relationship and I put it into the new key. Now, this tune is also, I think, catchy enough where you might not even have to do that. You could just simply go off of your ear, put it in the new key, and let your ear guide you through the new key, right? But it all depends on how your brain works. If you're somebody that works better with that analytical thinking, then really think about, okay, this is, a 7th over this chord, and it's a major third over this chord, or whatever. you can do that, or if your brain works better where you basically just rely on your ear and think about, okay, what does this melody sound like as a whole as it relates to whatever key we're in, you can do that as well. It's totally up to you. The important thing is, do not write it down in the other keys that you're trying to play it in. That's like the one thing that I would not do. This is more of an ear exercise. This is more of a changing what you're doing on the fly. There are certain things that work better when we write them down in all 12 keys, right? If you're a visual learner like I am, that could be really beneficial to you, but I would caution you against doing that with this particular exercise that I'm giving you. So it's going to take you a while. It's going to take you a while to get it through all those 4 keys. Some of the keys are going to be a heck of a lot easier than others, but the end goal is to do what I'm about to play for you right now, which is me actually playing that melody through all 4 keys of this particular progression. So here's what it sounds like: 4 keys, minor third apart. So a couple of things about that. You can actually hear I made a huge mistake right at the very end. Now, I could have re-recorded that so it sounded perfect, but you're going to make mistakes, right? I make mistakes when I'm doing stuff like this all the time. Don't worry about it. Don't let that stop you, right? Now, I have the disadvantage of you all getting to hear that mistake, but when you're practicing, nobody's going to be able to hear you do that. Now, the other thing is I've tried to design this melody where there's actually 2 empty measures at the end for you to prepare for the next key that's coming at you. Now, you'll also notice that it's pretty jarring the first couple of measures of the new key, because that relationship might be unfamiliar to you, but you can hear that it kind of settles in quickly. Your ear adapts to the new key rather quickly, and that's part of this too, is training your ears to hear progressions going to uncomfortable places that don't always make sense to us. So I think that all around, this is a pretty great exercise. So what we're going to talk about next week is now not playing a melody, but actually soloing over these 4 keys. And I'll give you some tips on how you can start to do that. Now remember, you do get the play along that loops those 4 keys, I think 8 or 9 times for you, so that you can just put on that play along and play for as long as you want to. So that's another huge advantage. If you want that, make sure you go over to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon links, and sign up to support the show. All right, I hope you all have success with this. Feel free to post it on the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group. A lot of people have been signing up for that. I'm going to post some stuff over there this week, and we're going to get things going where we're more of an educational community than a bunch of people just listening to this podcast and not interacting with each other. Okay, I'm sorry I went so far over time this week. We will see you next week with a brand new episode. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.